Today is November the 21st, 2019. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University, and along with me is Stan Rice, a retired NRCS employee, and we are in Beaver, Oklahoma to speak with Dr. Harold Kachel. And this is going to be part of our Oklahoma Conservation Heritage Oral History Project, which is a collaboration between the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at OSU. So thank you for letting us come today.
You're very welcome.
And I should say that you're a professor or a former professor, retired professor.
Yes.
From Panhandle State, and administrator too, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. 30 some years.
Yes.
Okay. Well, before we get to that part, let's learn about your early days. When and where were you born?
I was born in south of Beaver here, or about 10 mile at, actually Elmwood, and on a farm, and in 1928, January the 25th, 1928, and from a doctor out of Booker, Texas. They made all the farms around the area. He was the only doctor in the town that would deliver or help deliver babies. So it was a Dr. Smith that delivered me at the house. I was born in a sod house at the time. And then a few years later, my dad bought another farm near Balco, Oklahoma, and we moved over there. And I started my school at a place called Barker School, but no one ever called it Barker School. They always called it Possum Trot. And the reason they called it Possum Trot, it was near Clear Creek, and I guess the possums would come up there looking for scraps of food and what, and there was always some there, so it just became Possum Trot. I rode a horse to school, about 3 miles to school, for the first 2 years that I was in school. And the second year, Balco District bought school buses. Now, these school buses was an international truck with a flat bed on it, with a cover over the top, and bench seats along the sides, down the middle. And the heat came from the heater of the bus. That's it. So then I rode the school buses. Excuse me. I rode the school buses from then until I graduated from Balco School, grade school. And that was, the ride was about 50 miles. I was usually the first one on, the last one off, the way they set up the routes. So I graduated from Balco grade school, and the year I graduated from the Balco grade school, they dropped their high school. So our district transferred us to Beaver, paid the tuition. So then I went to Beaver High School, started at Beaver High School, and I stayed in town during the week and then went home on the weekend. So we rented a basement or room somewhere for me to stay at during the week. Graduated in 1946 from Beaver High School, and I got a deferment to finish high school from the government. As soon as I graduated, I got a letter from Uncle Sam said, "You will join up." So, and the four of us joined, or had to, or we joined the Air Force, and the two of us passed the Air Force physical. One got the Army and the other one was sent home. I did my basic training in Aberdeen, Maryland, and from there I was sent to Tokyo International Airport in the ATC, the Air Transport Command, which flew anything that went by air at that time went by the Air Transport Command. And I was in headquarters and headquarters squadron, was assigned to the message center. And my office at that time then was in Tokyo International Airport. Before I got to go to the office, though, I was quarantined for a month by the FBI. And my mother wrote me a letter and said, Harold said, there's people every time there's the neighbors around here, 4 or 5 miles, are calling wanting to know what in the world you've done. The FBI is wanting to know about you. Well, I said, Mom, I don't know, except I'm being checked for some kind of a job. I guess it'd be my job. Finally, I was cleared, so I was cleared for top secret material. And after that, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that work. But I thought the length of time that I was in is enough, so I didn't sign up. Came back home, helped on the farm, and started the Panhandle State A&M on the GI Bill. And I finished on GI Bill 1946. So no, I started school in 1947, graduated then in 52, and I finished a master's degree then at Stillwater. And in 1955, got married in 1955, started teaching at a little school in the Oklahoma Panhandle called Yarborough, which was right south of Elkhart, Kansas. Became the principal there, and while I was a principal, my wife was the secretary. The president of the college came out one day in 1956 and made me sign a letter. And I said, "What's this letter?" And he said, "Don't pay any attention to it, just sign it." So when I read it, it was a contract to start teaching back at the college. I said, "Doc," I said, "I've got a year to go here yet." And he said, "I know." I said, "This is for next year." So I started teaching back at the college in 1957 and was there until, well, I actually retired in 90, but I had been teaching in teacher education, and to be a legal program in teacher education in Oklahoma, they have to carry 51% doctorals. And when I quit, that put them low, so that I had to go back and teach a course to keep them legal for a few years. And I finally told them, I said, "You might as well hire somebody else. I'm going to quit this business." But I did teach a course I developed a course called Anthropology in the Oklahoma Panhandle that proved to be pretty popular. And when I quit teaching that, the history department wanted to teach it, and I said, "Go ahead and teach it." But I used all my own equipment and stuff, pictures. So they didn't have any material. Nobody would take it without me going and teaching it. So I taught it a few years, every year or every 2 years maybe, as on teacher education, continuing education class. Finally, I must have taught it 7 or 8 years after that, and then I just quit teaching. So we moved back to the farm. Of course, we farmed in with my dad and brother for a while till they died, and then I got to take the whole thing over again.
Well, then let's back up a little bit. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I had one living brother and two living sisters.
So
two dead sisters.
So there were 6 of you total?
Yes. But I didn't know my two older sisters. I just didn't know them. They died young with the flu and this during the 30s.
Well, when you were going to school here in Beaver during the week and then going home on the weekends, would you have chores and things to do on the farm?
Sure. There's a lot of it was waiting that hadn't been done. So they were waiting for me to get there. There was a school bus that came within about 3 miles of the home place. So usually my folks would take me to the school bus Monday morning. That Friday evening I had to walk home. So.
And how far was that?
Well, 3 miles, about 3 miles.
Took you a little while then.
Well, yeah, but they wasn't going to come and get me, that's for sure. Or didn't want to.
And what were they farming?
Basically, at the time, wheat and milo, kaffir corn, redneck stuff.
Had they been born and raised in this area too?
No, they were born. Both of them were born in Kansas, but they had moved to Major County, bought land in Major County, and then in 1917 they bought land out here. Got out of the trees.
And is that land still in your all's names?
Yes.
So it'd be a centennial farm.
Well, yes, where we're at.
Yeah.
We still own minerals in Major County, but the land sold. Dad sold the land.
Well, do you remember? Did they farm with horse and plows or a tractor?
Well, starting out, it was horses.
Horses.
But they finally got a tractor.
And do you recall any kind of conservation practices that he did, your father did?
Well,
early days.
Yeah, I try to get kind of a list going on what kind of how it moved through. If you want to go ahead with that part. I think one of the things that really tore up and started the Dust Bowl was plowing up everything. And the thing that caused the plowing up, basically, when the W9 International came out, that was a big tractor at the time, and they had a 16-foot Kraus plow, and they could plow up 80 acres a day with that unit. So that broke out. They plowed up everything that was plowable, a lot of it that wasn't. And of course, at that time, when they moved into a field, they started on the outside and they went around and around and around, uphill and downhill, whichever way. And that caused a lot of dust and, of course, washing. Eventually, my dad started plowing on the contour. They call it the contour, where he had them come out and stake it on the contour, and then we started trying to plow on the contour with those one ways. Sometime in there, well, let's see, I've got some notes in there. Detail. Kind of run down on it. During a period, a few years after that, one of the things that was the conservation that really helped our area was the government built farm dams and roadside dams. So if you as you travel out through this country, you'll notice most of the draws have dams in them somewhere. And some of them are roadside dams, built where the road was with a dam on the upside. And that stopped a lot of the, of course, washing. And that was one of the first things that I remember that really kind of helped the conservation was those roadside dams and dams in the fields on it. Then sometime, I think after that, we had allotted acres. So you could only plant so much acres in a field. The rest of it had to be laid out. And that kind of led, well, I can remember going in the FSA office, okaying those allotted acres, and we had farmed on the contour, and then they was terraced. And going in, and sometimes you'd get one individual that'd figure out you had too much planted or not enough planted. You have to go plant up or plow up some, and then you had to go verify it again. So I think it was called allotted acres on it. And then the terraces at the time that I remember was just pretty close to the contour that had been staked on most of our farm. And then finally all of our farms was terraced on it. The after another thing I think that helped quite a bit was my dad started using the chisel and chiseling it instead of one way. Well, he one wayed, but he also used a chisel on some of the ground, which helped. And then eventually, of course, the terraces, the sweeps came in. And the sweeps was a lot better than the chisel on it. At least it left more of the residue on top of the ground, which helped on it.
I'm not sure what a chisel, when you say chisel, what that is.
Well, it's a machine that has a hooked point on it, curved, and they're spaced about, you can get them in different configurations, but usually about 6 inches apart or 8 inches apart. And they just simply go in under the ground and lift it up. Leave ridges. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
And then, of course, the sweeps came in and just lifted the whole thing up and dropped it. That was a big improvement when you started going to the chisel and the sweeps, and then eventually just totally to the sweeps.
Would they be pulling those by a tractor or by horses?
Oh no, those
but still horses at that point?
No. That's tractors.
Tractors, okay.
Yeah.
Getting my timeline here.
Well, the horses went out kind of early as soon as those international they had the F-20s and F-30s.
Okay.
Yeah. W9s.
Yeah.
1530s. Yeah.
When those W9s came out, that's when they really started plowing it up on them.
How large was the farm back in the first early days?
My folks probably had about 1,500 acres, something like that.
More than the 160 you normally
yeah.
hear about. Okay.
Yes.
And no, go ahead.
Well, then the minimum till was kind of started. So not everybody would go to the minimum till, but my folks did always use the minimum till. And along with that, about that time, we, for some reason, we tried this half and half on the wheat grounds. And actually, I think that we broke even or made more money when you planted half of it and let the other lay out and then plant the other half the next year. And with that, then it kind of started to spring. That's when the spring came in, spring the ground on it. And about that time, or sometime in that period, you could probably help me with this. The soil bank, they started the soil bank.
1957.
1957, started the soil bank. And the problem with that stuff was they planted the wrong type of grass and nothing would eat it. After, when it first came up, they'd eat it until it got about so high, 3 or 4 inches, then they quit eating it. They wouldn't eat it. And you can still drive out through here and see some of those old soil bank pastures that have kind of a reddish looking grass on them. So that stuff didn't last well. They finally figured out that grass wasn't any good. The spring with that soil bank land, and then some of them during that time period started using chemicals, and that's when the chemicals basically came in. And after the no-till, minimum till, and then the spring, then you had, of course, now we've got the no-till and basically spraying. And I'm not sure, I think that maybe that spraying is what has killed a lot of our wildlife. Mm-hmm. It used to be plentiful, you don't see anymore on it. The last thing that they've done, I think, that caused, good is the living snow fence that we have out here. We have about 3 miles of living snow fence. And that really helped the population of the birds and that sort of thing. They really enjoy that living snow fence. And that brings us up to about where we're at today.
What do you think your father would have thought about the no-till?
It would have really taken some thought about that, getting used to that. Well, that tractor had to be out there in that field doing something on it.
Well, was it normal for him to go in and ask for information on current practices and
yes, he did
open to change?
Quite a bit. Yes, he tried to figure out how to keep it from blowing and washing on it. He really enjoyed the dams that was put in first. Those. Do you remember the dams that was built?
Yes.
Do you know what we're talking about?
I know vaguely. Yeah, a general idea.
Well, we've got some there on the place. If you'd like to take some pictures of them, and then I think once you see what you're looking at, you'll notice a lot of them in this area on the dams.
You were born in 28. You would have been a youngster when the dust storms were happening out in this area. Do you remember any particular one?
Yes, the Black Sunday, and you could see that thing coming. And of course, Mother had all the windows and doors, sheets hung over, and everything caulked, and the dust still got in. I remember when you went to the table, the plates were always upside down, everything was upside down. You had to turn them over and wash them or eat dirt, what difference did it make? I can remember at the old place, I'd go out with my dad sometime, and when he had baby calves, and the cows trying to eat on that wheat, to go out and catch the baby calves and open up their nose with dust. Their noses would be full of dirt. Try to catch them and get their noses cleaned out on it. And I can remember we had a big barn there at the home place, and I can remember walking along the south side after one of those storms with that barn, and it'd be dead birds along the top there, I guess, and I don't know what killed them. Either their noses filled up with dirt and they couldn't breathe, or they suffocated. But it's always sad to see the number of birds that would be dead along the south side of the barn on it.
About how often would that happen?
Well, it seemed like it's pretty often, but it varied, I guess, time to time. But the no-till, the terraces, and that stuff really helped slow it down. That's kind of moving it through, I guess, up to today.
Well, do you remember when electricity came to the home place?
Yes, that was an improvement. It just couldn't be beat. We was on a line that came to our place there, and it was really nice.
Was it before you went to college or after?
It was before.
Before the 50s then?
Yeah, it was. The other thing that my dad was president of a telephone line. They built their own line out of Balco for the telephone. Oh, I think our ring was 3 shorts and a long, and you had to get there quick or you couldn't hardly listen. There'd be so many people on the line to go the juice down.
No secrets.
No secrets. Everybody, that was their entertainment basically, was get to that telephone and listen in. Also, my dad bought a radio and printed there on Saturday night, they'd come over, most of the farmers around there, the neighbors would come over and listen to the radio.
Do you remember a particular show or what they would listen to?
There was one Western musical they listened to, or that most of them liked. I've even forgot the name of it now. But it was a Western musical.
And maybe baseball games?
No,
No.
I don't remember them listening to baseball games.
Okay.
Nobody was interested in baseball during that time period, really.
So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Well, I enjoyed science. Enjoyed biology. Wasn't too whippy on English.
What got you interested in being a teacher?
Well, I guess at the college I had my major instructor, my major advisor, was head of the technology, or they called it shop then, and he really encouraged me to work at it, get a degree in industrial arts or shop, and for some reason I think he was a pretty good influence. And the other one was Miss Muller. I'd been a veteran. I was one of the veterans there. So we stayed in one of the halls, and there was probably 4 or 5 of us were veterans in there, and the rest of them were just students coming in there. And Miss Muller she figured out right quick that none of the veterans was missing any classes. They was always there on time. And I had a couple of buddies there that lived in the same dorm, and it was hard to get them up. So Miss Muller called me in one day and said, I know that you've been in the military, and you guys can get those guys over here. So I want you to help get those other students to class. So we had a little meeting in the dorm. Said, now you guys, she's getting on us because you're not going to class. And said, we're not going to put up with that. And they started going to class. But Miss Muller, she got the good out of everyone that she could, and as much of it as she could. She's the one that told me, said, you need to go on to school, get your master's. And I took some courses at that time. A&M, Oklahoma A&M had some teachers that came out and taught some classes there. Their beginning classes at good ones at the school there. So I took some and got started on that. Got enough of them that she said, you go get your master's. You just like a few hours and you can have your master's, which was right. So I just, at the time, my folks, most of the farm was in this, either CRP or the other program. So there wasn't much to do at the farm. So I just started teaching.
Other options.
Yes, there's the other option. I always worked at the farm, helped keep it going, but also that was my second option, was to teach. So I started teaching.
Were you the first in your family to go to college?
To graduate, yes.
Okay, to graduate.
Yeah, my sisters went to accounting 2 years. They took 2 years of accounting classes at, I believe it was, they went to Dodge. So they had a 2-year accounting program there out of Wichita State or somewhere. But I was the first one to graduate from college.
When you were in Stillwater, where did you live?
I lived in the girls' dorm.
In the girls' dorm?
Willard Hall.
Willard Hall. Yeah, still, it's an administrative building, or education. College of Education is in it now.
Yeah. Well, that's where I stayed, in there. It was a girls' dorm at the time. They had a little problem with it for a while. They had the males on the bottom and the girls on the top. They probably had, anyway, didn't bother me, but some of them were trying to take advantage of that situation.
Oh, and was that because there were so many returning veterans?
Yeah.
They needed the space?
Yeah.
And what was your major there?
Secondary administration.
And at Panhandle, it was industrial?
No, industrial arts.
Industrial arts. Well, when you were first out of high school, did you have plans on what you thought you were going to do with your career life? If the Army hadn't come along?
Well, that was, yeah, you didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice.
Well,
I went to the Army.
But if you hadn't, what were you planning?
Well, probably farm.
Farm.
My older brother was crippled, so it's hard for him to get on the tractor. But once he got on it, he'd be all right. But Dad was always afraid he'd fall or something trying to get on it. So he usually He'd have somebody there to help him get on the tractor. But once he got on it, then he liked that. I guess the teaching part also came probably from my work at Japan. The office was in the message center, and we had to work with a lot of people coming into Japan, and it was interesting. Of course, anybody that flew in Tokyo by air we had to work them through, and that meant working with the Russians and the Australians, and well, all over actually, but we had the most trouble with the Russians. We had the most fun with the Australians. Every time they'd see a white man or a United States person, we'd always call a Texan. We was a Texan to them. Some of the guys would be off base. I was on 24-hour duty there, and some of the guys would be off base. If they ever got in trouble and there was an Australian around, they was on their side. They'd help them fight it out. But there's always a Texan they'd help it. Didn't make any difference where he's from. There's a Texan.
So you weren't an Okie.
No, Okie.
Well, that's a long way from Beaver, from Tokyo to Tokyo.
Well, there's a story there too. We did my training in Aberdeen, Maryland, to proving grounds. They shipped us to Seattle, Washington, and we were supposed to fly, but for some reason there was 7 or 8 of us that got bumped from the flight. So there was a boat going over. They just assigned us to that boat. And we went up around the Aleutians, got into a storm. We were called to duty quarters. And after, before, it hadn't been too long after we were called to duty during that storm. They was trying to go into the storm, and it kept pushing them back, so they just turned around and went with it. And then they shut the engines off and told us to go to the edge and watch for anything. And pretty soon we heard a shot and an explosion, another shot and another explosion. We didn't know what was on our side. We didn't know what was going on. But during that storm, a bunch of the Japanese bombs had broke loose. They had them where they were just so many feet under the water, but they broke loose and they drifted to the top. And we were right in the middle of them, so they was shooting them, exploding them. When we finally got to Japan, we unloaded it at Yokohama, and we were on one of the bases there. We got unloaded. One of the guys, we was in the mess hall, and one of the guys said, "Man," said, "you guys must have had some fun coming over." I said, "Fun? What are you talking about?" He said, "All those nurses got off." Said, "There's 1,700 nurses got off." I said, "Off of that boat we was on?" He said, "Yeah." Never saw a nurse on that boat. Oh, boy. I don't know. I just enjoyed the teaching part somehow.
Well, and if it hadn't been for the serving in the military, you wouldn't have had the GI Bill to
No.
get you to college, I
Yeah.
guess, too.
That's right.
And while you were being a professor, did you also farm
Yes.
at the same time?
Yes.
Back here in Beaver?
Yes. I could, well, lots of times, depending on what we were doing, I would go home at 5 o'clock and John would have a lunch for me, and I'd get in the pickup and drive to the farm and work till about 10 or 11 or 12 o'clock and go back and then on the weekends. I always stayed on a 9-month contract, so always on a 9-month contract. Pauline said she one time when she was teaching at the college up there where I was, she taught teacher education, and she went on the field on their 9 weeks of practice teaching. And one day she said, "Where'd you do your practice teaching?" And what school? She said, "What school did you go to do your practice teaching?" Well, high school. I said, "I didn't go to high school." She said, "You didn't? You didn't practice teaching in high school?" And I said, "No." She said, "You're kidding." I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "Well, where'd you do your practice teaching?" I said, "At the college." She said, "How'd you get that?" I said, "I had never thought about it." But she said, "There's something fishy here, or you would have been practice teaching at the college."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." When I went in and got my letter, I opened it up, and it said I signed my major professor there at the college, and I taught industrial arts. I practice taught in the industrial arts department. And she said, "And then the president, 2 years after you got your master's, came out and said, 'You're back to teaching industrial arts?'" I said, "Yeah." She said, "They already had you figured out, didn't they?" I never thought of that before.
Somebody planned your career for you.
Miss Muller and the doctor.
Well, when you were farming and teaching, were you doing any conservation practices at that time on the place when it was yours to do with?
Well, yeah, that's when we went strictly to sweeps.
Sweeps.
All the plows were pulled up and pasture somewhere, and they're still sitting there.
Yep.
But I went strictly to sweeps and no till, minimum till.
Raising cattle?
Yes.
Mostly?
Yeah.
So how many ponds, like natural ponds versus man-made ponds on your place?
No, don't have any.
None?
They're all man-made.
All man-made.
All this.
That's pretty typical for this area?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah, nobody had the money to build those ponds. But if we have some on, well, we can sometime, if you like, we can go out and I can show you some of them.
Well,
both on the farm.
Would the Soil Conservation Service help make some of those though? Didn't they?
They did. They were the ones that made them.
Yeah, that's what
Or
I was
paid
thinking.
for it. Yeah. That's to me, that was the first thing that they did that really improved the top of the water flow, the washing.
Do any of them fill up?
Well, that's the problem with it. When I meet periodically with them in here now, and they said, "Well, what do you think should be done?" And I said, "Well, the first thing you ought to do is go out there and clean out all those old dams because they've all filled up and washing around."
Sediments come in?
Yeah. They're all, I don't know of any of them that's actually working now. Well, there may be one, we may have one on our place that's still working. But because it was built there in a pasture.
50 or 60 years ago.
Yeah.
Or a lot longer. Longer.
I believe there's one there that still holds a little water. Maybe they've redone the roadside dam there a time or two, and it may hold a little water that's on one of our places. But all the others are all full. They've been full for years.
Hmm.
Settlement on them.
And I was reading that you were on the board of directors for the Farm Bureau.
Yes.
What did that entail?
Well, basically, just keeping up with what's going on.
Hmm.
That's about it. We're waiting for instructions to come from the top.
And you don't have a computer, so that's how you keep up with things, is come to meetings
Yes.
and word of mouth?
Yes, I do not have a computer and I don't use it. But when I have to, on some of the programs we had that, it has to be done on the computer. So I got my youngest daughter, I said, you just, all this stuff that comes in on the computer, I said, just have it directed to your computer and you figure out what we need to do and I'll tell you what to do, or if you can't figure it out, we'll just work it out together and then you work on it. So everything goes into, I don't have a computer, so it goes to her computer.
Okay.
And she works it out.
So when you retired from Panhandle State in 1990, computers were just now coming to the desktop.
I missed all of that.
You missed that. You were lucky. You were lucky.
I never did want one. I don't know. I said, I don't feel comfortable sitting there looking at a screen and telling me what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And now it's about all you can do with them, I guess.
So with the NRCS, you would have to go in and do a plan for your property,
Yes.
would you?
And I've got one plan now that is done strictly on the computer, so my youngest daughter figured out what to do and how to answer it and go on to keep it going. I have enough trouble with the computers in the car and the pickup, the combine and everything else telling you what to do.
So
I know they're getting you ready for a driverless car, but
yeah.
As an example, last winter, I don't know, I was in a hurry anyway. I just went out and got in the car and started down the highway. Pretty soon a voice came on and said, why don't you slow down a little bit and let this thing warm up? I said, what's your hurry? And I thought, my gosh. Tell me how to drive now?
So you still have a combine?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we haven't sold into this stuff. My gosh.
So what's going on the property these days?
It's all CRP
All of it?
or rented out. The grass is rented out and all the rest of it's in CRP or one of the programs.
So you don't need the equipment?
Don't need it. I should sell it, but I don't need the money. And I've got 2 tractors that I noticed an advertisement on them. They're bringing about $100,000 a piece, and I thought, my God, I've got 2 of those international 2+2s.
Yeah.
And everybody now is picking them up. Nobody liked them when they came out. Man, I thought that was the best thing going.
Yeah.
You could put them up on those terraces, and they'd stay on that terrace. You didn't have to fight it to keep them on the terrace. And now, I don't remember what I gave for them, but I know it wasn't nothing like that.
$100,000. No.
Why do you think they want them now? Any idea?
The way they look and the way they run and drive, you know, they're a very unusual looking tractor, really. No, most people didn't like them. Well, I thought that was the best looking thing going.
Yeah.
Could you repair them yourself, or would you have to get someone to come out to do it?
Never did have to repair them.
Didn't have to. Okay.
I've never had any problems with those 2+2s. Had an old W9 repaired a few times. I've got an M Farmall. Had it repaired a few times. But never, those 2+2s have never been touched like that.
Well, do you have problems with feral hogs on your place?
Not yet.
Not yet.
And the reason I don't have, I think, I've got the people that rent the grass keep them shot off. They don't say anything about it. But, I know that there's been antelope on most of our places, and antelope are all gone, and so there's no hogs there either. But I know they've hunted them. They just carry rifles with them, and when they see one, they shoot it and don't say anything about it.
Well, the antelope, though, they would hunt for.
No, they don't. The antelope, strange thing about them, they don't like to jump a fence. You'd think they would. They want to go through it. And of course, that'll tear them up, tear the fence up.
Well, then the other problem is red cedars.
Well, yes, but if the red cedars that come up in the pasture where there's cattle, if it's milk, the cows, for some reason they'll just eat them. They'll keep them killed out. But I've got these 3-mile living snow fence, and I've never had any problem with it except when the fire took out about a 2-mile, 11-mile of them down here. As you came by
I saw some that were dead, but I hadn't put it together with being a fire, having been
that's a
caused
fire
that.
that came through there. We wasn't in the big fire, we was in the little fire, the Beaver fire that joined up with the big one south of us down there.
That was good. Was that south of your house there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember Danny Thomas.
Yeah.
Did a lot of those snow fences, living fences.
He's the one that put those in.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 mile of them there.
Yeah.
That he put in.
Did you have to apply for those, or volunteer, or?
Well, he came by. He said he'd been trying to get some grants to do that for several years, and nobody wanted them. He stopped at the house and said, "Would you be interested in some living snow fences?" And I said, "Where are you going to put them?" He said, "Well, in your pastures." And I said, "Just have at it. Go as far as you want." And then after we got them, and everybody saw what we had, and the birds was flocking to them.
Yeah.
Then they wanted them, and of course the grant was gone.
Yeah.
Made them mad. Now the neighbors were all mad at that time because we got some and nobody else did on the north-south highways. I think Colfax got a few.
Yeah. Did Max live in the house where you live now?
At one time.
At one time. Okay. Was he older than Joanne?
Yes.
You want to tell any Hector Tate stories?
Well, the old machinery, I kind of like the old machinery, and 2 of those thrash machines are sitting out there are Tate's.
Are they? Yeah.
I think I gave $10 a piece for them, something like that.
This is an inside joke.
Okay.
Hector was a character.
Oh yeah, he was something, but yeah. He had all that old machinery out there. Nobody wanted those combines. I bid $10 and got both of them. You know. And one of my students from high school bought a place up here before Forgan, and sometime he came by the house and saw those out there. He said, "Them machines, them things you got out there," he said, you want another one? And I said, well, is it like those out there? And he said, well, yeah, I think so, except it's got something in front of it. And I said, it's got something in front of it. He said, yeah, big old long thing in front of it. He said, you want it? And I said, well, I'll go look at it. And I went up there, and of course, it was just like those. And of course, it had the feeder on it. Well, I didn't have a feeder for those, so I said, yeah, I'll take it. So I went up and got her home with the feeder.
So how many do you have?
There's three.
Three.
Well, you know, one of our projects with what we're doing with the Conservation Historical Society is looking at machinery and preserving it like in a museum setting like right here. And so one of these days we may come back and talk about some old Miller rod weeders or something really unusual that like some of the old Noble plows or Noble drills or something that's it's not very common outside the Panhandle anyway.
Yeah. I think we've got a rod weeder out there. Most of it I just pulled out pasture and left it. That's where I pulled the one ways.
Yeah.
On it. Well, I've got quite a bit of old equipment out there.
Yeah.
I've got two 4-wheel one ways.
Oh, really? Are they Kraus or are they?
I thought one of them was international.
International Miller.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
One of them, we bought a place down here on Cliff Creek, and there was a sand dune there by the road, and it blew enough that I noticed a handle sticking out of it. So I went down there and dug it out, and it was a 4-wheel plow.
Oh, well. What about a whirlwind terracer? Have you ever seen one of those around?
Yes.
Carver's probably got some over there.
Probably. Yeah, I've got it. I may have one.
Have you used one of these things at one time in your life?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
When we built the terraces, the first time, to keep them built up, I don't think I borrowed it. I don't know. I mean, borrowed one. It seems like I've got one out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And the threshing machines, had you used those when you were younger
Oh, yeah.
and growing up?
Yes. Yeah. We had that maize and had horses and walking along in the lap with the wagon and cut those heads off and throw them in the wagon, and you made ricks out of them, and then you pulled those thrash machines up there and thrashed them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to pitch a lot of maize to those things.
Did the community as a whole come together when that was going on, or was it on just each farm did their own thing?
Well, each farm did their own thing basically, but if one of them got sick, then the whole bunch came in and cleaned it up, fixed it, worked together on that. And my dad ran one of the thrash machines that we've got out there, and Elmer Boston lives right down here, had one, and lots of times that they'd run the two together. They just form a group and run the two units together.
Mm.
I went along with them one time to help Dad on his. And we went in for dinner. Usually the people he was working for furnished the dinner. And we sat down to eat, and one of the guys was in one of the crews. I don't remember who it was, and I said something about, well, pass the butter. And the lady of the house said, "Listen, mister, if we had any butter, we'd have it on the table." Oh,
Good old days, right?
yeah.
So when you were like in high school and things, has the population changed that much from then to now
Oh,
in
yeah.
the area?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's the population here in the Beaver area has gone way down.
Down.
When I got on the bus to come to Beaver, the Thomases ran the bus. One of their places out here, Preston Thomas drove the bus. I'd go up there and get on that bus. And by the time we got to Beaver, they'd be 35 or 40 kids on there. Well, he could run the same route now, maybe get 3.
Maybe.
Mm.
You could have a hard time finding 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The Mason out here, probably the only one's got any kids, so I don't see the bus going that way anymore. But yeah, the population, they're used to pretty much. I remember almost every quarter had a family on it.
Mm.
Most of the old houses and everything's gone. The way you can tell if there's a tree growing out there or some kind of shrubbery, there was a farm there at one time.
Mm.
Some family lived there and planted that thing.
Yes, it had to be planted. It
Yeah.
wasn't here.
Well, no.
Well, then how frequent was like the schoolhouse? Their one-room schoolhouses
Every 6 miles.
every 6 miles. Hmm. And you rode your horse to your. What would you do with it during the day?
Well, they were barns.
Hmm.
They had toilet in one corner of the school ground, and one girls in the other corner of the schoolhouse, and a horse barn in between the two. And the horse I rode, it was kind of a part of a quarter horse. He didn't want to go to school. But that evening, when you threw the reins on him, if you stepped in that stirrup, you better get on right then, because he was gone.
There you go.
You didn't have to tell him where to go.
Going home.
He went, and he'd run. You'd let him gallop, because he was going home. He'd had enough of that business out there in that school. Usually I kept some hay down there for him, but that wasn't the same thing as eating it at home.
And you would have been like 6, 7, 8 years old, somewhere in there?
Yeah.
Wow.
6 and 7.
Do you remember its name? The horse's name?
Jim.
Jim.
He was black as he could be. Part quarter horse. He was a good horse, but
Well, did your brothers and sisters have a horse too that they rode to school on, or did you have to
no,
share?
they walked.
They walked.
Now they went to Elmwood.
Hmm.
When my folks first came out here, they rented a place, one of the bear places down there on Clear Creek, and they walked to school. About a mile and a half or something like that.
Did you ever think about moving out of Oklahoma?
No.
No. Where do you consider home? Beaver County?
Yeah.
Beaver.
Yeah. This is home.
When you were teaching at the Panhandle, did you live there or did you commute?
Well, we lived in Goodwill.
Goodwill. It did a little bit of a commute.
But I drive back and forth.
Check on the place.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the vacant houses, most of the old vacant houses that fell down are gone now even. But to think that there was a farm on every quarter almost. They was rich farmers. They had a half section.
Well, what's the land used for most now?
It's all CRP and grass.
I mean, most of the area.
Yeah.
And maybe some cattle.
Well, they're cattle, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Between here and the farm, which is about 17, the old home place, about 17 miles southwest of here, it used to be all wheat. I mean, everything that could plow up was plowed up. And now the only way that's got any wheat over there is the Bukowskis. And it's near Balco.
Mm.
All the rest of it. Luckily, it's CRP and they're not plowing it up. I hope they don't.
Oh, was cotton part of the picture out here?
Not then.
Not then.
There's a lot of cotton raised in the area now. There's truckloads of cotton been going south for the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Where's a cotton gin?
Spearman, largest cotton gin in the world.
Is in this.
Spearman, Texas.
Oh, Texas.
Yeah.
Well, so Oklahoma doesn't have that many cotton gins. I mean, I don't know.
Not anymore.
They
6
had-
or 7 maybe.
Yeah.
Used to be a gin in every community south of here, but not anymore.
No. No, that's the only unit. That's a big one down there.
It's a big, big gin.
Well, do you do any prescribed burns on your place?
No, I haven't.
Nature takes care of that sometimes.
Well, it did. And that was scary. The big fire was burning east of us along there, and then this one started over here, the Beaver fire, and it was coming our way. The sheriff, one of the deputies came out first and said, I came to the door and he said, you just get whatever you want, a little bit, and said, get out of here, go south. I said, for what? And he said, for that fire that's coming across there. I said, okay. So he left. I got in the pickup and moved it around there, but I was still sitting there. I was watching it. I said, well, that thing's not anywhere near us. Pretty soon the sheriff came in and he said, I thought they told you to get out of here. And I said, well, yeah, but I don't. He said, no ifs and buts about it. He said, get in that pickup right now and you go south. I said, well, I'll just get, no. He said, you're not going back in the house. He said, I said, get in that pickup. And so I did. And he followed me a mile south and there were several vehicles down there. So I just said, well, I'll just go over to the pasture over west and see it. Well, when I went over there, then you could see it coming across there. I mean, you could see the blaze. I looked behind, there was a pickup behind me, and I thought, well, what's that guy doing, following back there? I thought, well, maybe he's looking too. So I drove back down there and was sitting on top of the hill, and there he was. I finally figured out he was following me. The sheriff said, you follow that guy, don't let him go back around there.
They knew you too well.
You like an old horse, you just want to go home.
Yeah, that's, the boy had some cattle here south of the house, and so I called him and I said, Stan, I said, that fire's coming across there, and I said, they won't let me go up here and cut the fence where they can go south. I said, you better get down here, cut the fence or call somebody or something. But I said, don't come down the highway. I said, you come in from the back road. There's a back way you can get in there. I said, you come in the back way and check on your cattle. Well, when he came through, checked on his cattle, they were all right south of the house in that corner. And this, we had those llamas there. And one of the neighbors had cut the fence down there, but the cattle didn't go through there, but they was all up in that corner. Well, when the fire came across there, they had 3 road graders out there by the house, and they got it stopped about, I don't know, 4 feet from our red building out there, and got it slanted off to the south. And the cattle were all over in that corner. And Stanley, when he got to finally check them, he lost, I think, 1 or 2 that died, but they were all singed. And I thought, those llamas were singed a little. I thought, well, how in the world did those cattle get up here? And I still believe that those llamas forced those cattle to that place. I think they forced them to there. This is my guess, but no other way would they have survived.
Yeah.
And been, singed, and one of them had enough that he killed him. But it's amazing how those llamas take care of those cattle.
Yeah.
Those calves for them.
I didn't know llamas did that.
Really?
I mean, I know I've heard donkeys keeping them protected from the coats, but
Well, that's what those llamas do.
llamas do too.
Yeah, they protect anything that comes through there. We've had deer. I had a bird feeder by the house. I watched all the time. I kept it full of grain, or tried to. But I noticed that at night it'd disappear. I got to watching one night, and the deer was coming up there and eating it out of that bird feeder. Well, those llamas, and then they'd go out and get a drink of water. Well, those llamas stopped that. There's no deer around there anymore. They've got them all run off.
And that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, no coyotes come up around there either. Those llamas, they watch those calves. It's amazing how they stay with those calves, or they know where they're at. They may not be right with them, but they're a few hundred yards off or near. It's amazing how they watch those calves.
It seems kind of strange since that's not in the historical chain of the ecosystem here, llamas.
Yeah, no.
Wow. So what else has changed in the area? I mean, less people, less farming, less wind, less dust blowing, I guess.
Once in a while you'll see, mostly down the roads it's blowing now.
Yeah.
Not the fields. Every once in a while you'll see a field blowing, but it's usually down the roads. There's not very much plowed up. Well,
irrigation is there much?
There's some irrigation, not too much in the area. Right in here, and then get up on the flat where it's flat. There's a lot of irrigation. The rest of it. Well, the Beaver, when the oil people decided to move out and start shutting down these little wells, Beaver is just totally on the pot. They said there was 127 houses for sale in this town alone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Have you noticed water table out south of town? Have you noticed any changes in the water table?
There's a spring that I go by once in a while that was way down a couple of years ago, and I guess we've had enough water that table has came back up probably
It's back.
a foot or foot and a half, maybe a little more.
Yeah. Were your wells hand dug? Were they hand dug wells way back in the 20s?
No, they still had it. They'd already brought in the well diggers. Then we had the well at the home place was on one of your programs, because they come out and check it every year, the water level, and they could tell which way the flow of the water was going.
Yeah.
Of course, it was always on the Anadarko Syndrome, it was always flowing to the southeast. And it hadn't lost any. The last time it was checked, it raised a little, but it was still flowing. It's on the Anadarko Syndrome.
Yeah.
We had there's a company that came in there. There's a bunch of little oil wells out there. It wasn't pumping much, didn't have much oil in them. They decided that they would flood it, saltwater flooded. So I guess they worked at that for about 2 or 3 years, and they'd go out and check it, and they never could get any of their salt water back. And we had some wells down in Clear Creek, which is about 6 or 7 miles from the wells that are west of the house, and the production on those shot way up. But those it didn't affect those. They was trying to salt water. It didn't affect them at all. And finally, one of the guys was taking out some of their stuff over there one day, and I asked the pumper, I said, "What are you guys doing?" He said, "We're taking all this stuff out, so we can't get any of our salt water back. It's not helping us any." And I said, "Well, you probably ought to leave it." I said, "You're really helping our wells down there in Clear Creek." He said, "On Clear Creek?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I've never heard of such a thing." I said, "Well, have you ever heard of the Anadarko Syndrome?" He said, "No." I said, "Go check that." The next time I saw him, I said, "What about that Anadarko Syndrome?" He said, "We didn't know it was there."
Yeah. Yeah.
Water flows to the southeast.
Yeah.
But I knew what it was because that's what they said on our well over there, that water was flowing on the Anadarko Syndrome, which went to the southeast.
Still teaching.
Yeah,
Every opportunity. Or informing, I guess.
Well, you'd think that the old people would figure out or know somebody surely would know that. But if they're not thinking about it, I guess it doesn't make any difference if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And then they try to figure it out.
Yeah. Not their priority.
No. Well, as soon as they stopped it, our wells down in Clear Creek went back to about normal, maybe a little less. Of course, now they're all going down pretty much. In fact, they said that unit, big outfit in here, is moving out. Gosh. They'll take out some more tax dollars that Beaver needs.
Any wind turbines?
They're south of us. We've got one piece of ground down there that's south of us, west of Elmwood. We got land in here. We got wind turbines on this side. We got wind turbines on this side. We got wind turbines on the other side. And the land is leased for wind. And I asked one of the guys there, I said, "How come? What happened? Where's our turbines?" He said, "Oh, we can't go in on your land." I said, "Why not?" He said, "You got prairie chicken." Those prairie chickens don't pay any attention to those turbines. None whatsoever. I went to some of those prairie chicken meetings, and it's ridiculous what they say. One of the ladies she was from, I believe, North Dakota, was down here telling us how to take care of the prairie chicken. She said that you need to hang these little flashing things on the fences along there.
Yeah.
Keep them sitting on the fence. I said, "They don't sit on the fence." She said, "Yes, they do." She said, "You can walk on almost any fence and you can find prairie chicken bones or feathers or something." And I said, "Lady, I've built fence for probably 70 years. I've never seen a prairie chicken sitting on the fence."
No.
Well, she said, "There's bones along there and feathers." And I said, "Sure. If a hawk catches one, where does he go to eat it?" he goes to the first darn fence he can find, or telephone pole, or highline pole, and sit there and eat it. And where do the feathers go and the bones? Fall to the ground. No, I just didn't think that's right. Well, I believe A&M, some lady there did a survey for 2 years on all our land, and they discovered that it wasn't the hawks was what was doing that. And they said, well, these high lines, they won't get around those high lines. Well, they kept seeing this one hen over here by the plant, and they knew she must have a nest, so they got up early enough and they was out there and they checked her, kept checking her, they followed her. She had a nest right under that high line, right under that high line. They said, well, the other thing this gal said was they was afraid of noise. Well, they won't stay around, she said, they won't stay around these pump jacks that's making all that noise. Well, they found out that they were around those pump jacks. And they saw pigeons sitting on top of those pump jacks with a nest as it was going up and down. And these prairie chickens didn't affect them either.
Yeah.
Yet they wouldn't put a wind turbine in on ours because we had a prairie chicken on it. They saw prairie chicken out there.
Do you have a lack on your place? Have booming ground?
Yeah.
You do? Tanya's needing to go listen to those one of these days. To come springtime.
Well, we had one right south of the house down here for several years. And then it moved west. They said they never moved those. Well, that's a bunch of it.
Yeah.
Because they moved west about 1.25 miles. It was set up there. And now it's moved over on the City Law Road, that Blacktop Road, on the hog barn going west. It's set up there on one of the hills. And it'd be, I guess, 4 miles.
Yeah.
So
That's a chance.
They say that they don't move is not right either.
It's fun.
Oh, yeah. People used to stop down here on the highway or set up there on that hill or this hill here and watch them.
Yeah.
Because they was right south down there on that little hill south of our house. But they moved it.
So wildlife protection comes into play with farming practices.
Well, yeah,
Sometimes good, sometimes not.
well, this report that they put out years ago, I don't think they ever did any more research on it. They just kept repeating it, and it's all wrong for this area.
What about prairie dogs? Do you have those?
Yeah, there's prairie dogs. In fact, from our house out there, a mile, be a mile east and about 2.5 miles north, there's a big den of prairie dogs in there. We don't have any on ours, but I'll see one once in a while, a pair going through. I think the young ones get pushed out every so often.
Well, you wondered if the feral hogs have something to do with prairie dogs.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Well, most of the farmers around here, if they see a hog, I mean, he's dead if they can get to him.
Mm.
I haven't seen one in several years.
There's not too many places for them to hide out here either.
No. No.
I mean, there's some, but not many. Well, does the sod house that you were born in still exist?
No.
Doesn't.
No. There's some of the sod there. About all.
And your youngest, you probably don't remember living in it if they moved pretty soon afterwards.
Yeah, I remember. I can remember some of it. One of the things that I really remember is it had a south window, and it had a black widow spider set up in there, and I didn't understand why. I said, the spider, let's get rid of it. And folks said, no, leave him alone. As long as they kept the little one, their sack, their egg sack, they kept them all picked off, just the spider. But it was there to catch the flies.
Huh.
They didn't want him as long as he just the one, or they could keep up with it. He was there to catch the flies.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it, if you think about it?
Yeah, it does, but you don't. Kids, a spider up there, they don't get it. But they kept I noticed they always they said, well, watch for the little egg pouch. To keep them picked off and thrown out, but let's leave him there as long as he doesn't bother anything.
Huh.
He's there for the flies.
Well, that's an interesting childhood memory.
Yes.
And in a way, it's kind of conservation.
Well,
in a way.
It's different. I didn't understand it at the time, but eventually it made sense a little bit as long as you knew where that thing was.
Not in your bed.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, when you were at the one-room school, did they do pie suppers and such?
Oh yeah, that's they met pretty regular. Some of the families did. They did. Well, that was a community building. That's where they went to.
What about for church? Was church?
There was a church about 2 or 3 miles on southeast that everybody went to there. There's a graveyard out there, and we went to that church.
And what were some things you would do for fun when you weren't doing chores? What were you doing for fun?
Well, hunting rabbits, basically. Hunting. While I was in high school, I hunted and skinned the rabbits and stuff and sold enough hides that was my spending money. I had to eat.
Beaver was a pretty big town. Well, did it have a movie theater? Or
yeah.
It did?
Yeah.
Wow.
Movie theater. Several cafes. Gee whiz. Now it's just going to pot. The lumberyard quit. Said the flower shop quit. Of course, the show's been gone for a number of years. Like I said, they said there's 127 houses for sale in town.
Where do you have to go to get your groceries yourself?
I usually go to Liberal and get them at Walmart.
Okay. Into Kansas then?
Yeah.
How far is that from?
About 60 miles.
Not too awfully bad.
No. Well, I had some pretty good neighbors, and then my son runs cattle out here on the place, and his wife sends me some meals along, and then I have a lady neighbor. She makes sure that I've got something to eat or wants to. She brings food pretty regular.
Well, do you keep a garden?
No, I haven't for a while.
Oh, wow.
I've discovered these dinners at Walmart sell. What they are, I forgot what the name of them are. but they're sealed, and all you got to do is stick them in the microwave and heat them for a couple of minutes, and you got a good meal.
Yep.
I forgot. Now there's all kinds of those things now. So you know, you're liberal. I'd go out there and buy a few of them.
Stock
I
up.
don't have to worry about it, and I can cook if I have to.
It's been a pretty good life.
Been a good life for me.
Well, what's your favorite time on the farm? Season-wise or during the day, what's your favorite time?
Well, when it was, yeah, somebody would ask me about, well, why are you still on the farm? And I said, well, there's just something about the end of the day, when you get off the tractor and walk back to the pickup, and you walk across that plowed ground, it just smells different. And if you've ever gotten up after you've sown the wheat, seen that green coming up, rows of that green wheat showing up, so that there's a thrill there to see it. And then when it's harvest time, you cut it. Something about the smell of that is different. And there's got to be something in there that's attractive.
Yeah.
That you just enjoy it. I enjoy it. That's all there is to it. I enjoyed it then. And now you guys come along and we got all this CRP.
And you can't plow the ground to smell it.
No.
That's what I'm thinking.
But you can still smell the sagebrush after a rain.
Yeah.
That is a smell.
We don't have much sagebrush in our area right now. It's farther east or west. But you're right. There's just something about that.
Well, was there a time that your family, your father or you even thought you might lose the farm?
Well, yes. Of course, I didn't understand it. But my older sister worked at the courthouse, and she paid the taxes on the farm there for several years.
Hmm.
She kept the farm in Dad's name for several years. I know that. I know that now.
Yeah.
Didn't then. I didn't know how he was holding on to it, but I finally found out, figured it out.
That wasn't discussed around the dinner
No.
table? Or was it supper? I guess supper table.
Supper, yeah.
Supper.
No, it wasn't discussed, but I found years later, I finally figured out that she was paying it, paying the taxes for it. She worked at the courthouse and had an income.
Well, did she stay in the area and stay out farming?
No, she married a Hal, and when the war came along, they moved to Wichita to work at Boeing and then Cessna, and that's where he worked during the war.
Mm.
So they just stayed, made Wichita their home.
The war impacted the family in various ways.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Well, what was the favorite thing your mother would cook for you?
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken. And so she raised chickens?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. During the 30s and even after that, of course, we ate a lot of jackrabbit during the 30s there. If I'd go out and shoot them, and I always enjoyed that part. But yeah, we had hogs, you had chickens, sold eggs, you had milk cows, you sold cream. When everybody came to town on Saturday afternoon, they'd sell the eggs and the cream, and I got 15 cents. And I'd go across the street, I could get a hamburger for a nickel, then go to the show for a dime and stay all afternoon.
And you got to do that each week or
Pretty regular.
pretty regular?
And it wasn't if it was the same show was showing, well, I'd go out in the back alley somewhere and shoot marbles with somebody. There's always a bunch of marble games in the back alleys, in the alleys.
So how far from your house to town then?
Well, it was 17 miles.
So you couldn't just walk home from
Oh,
there
no,
then?
no. But you knew about when my folks was ready to go. I mean, you know, they was always visiting with somebody. So you kind of watched the car.
Mm.
Saw anybody come into the car, and you would hurry there. Yeah, it's amazing the number of people that's disappeared from this area between then and now. It's amazing that there was somebody on their record. It's unbelievable now.
How many were in your high school class, graduating class?
47, I think.
47. That's a pretty good size.
Yeah, well, there's like I said, almost every quarter had a family on it, and most of them had several kids.
Well, do you know if that stayed in the family or if they sold it off to other people, the ones that have left?
Most of it's been sold off to
To
other people.
And your brother's still in the area?
No.
No?
No, my family's been dead for quite a while. My mother and father died in the 60s, and my brother died in the 80s.
So going forward, what do you see happening in like the next 10, 15 years?
Well, I think it'll depend a lot on what the CRP decides to do. If there's been rumors that it might be cut way back, but you know, you don't know. I just hope they don't plow it back up. I think most of them won't. I think it'll all go, it'll just stay grass now and be cattle. At least I hope that's what they do.
Did you have plans for your place?
Yes, our place, it's called the Kachel Family Limited Partnership. A few years ago, a lawyer down here called me in and he said, Harold, I need to talk to you a little bit. So I went in and he said, the government had just came out with a new program. It's called the Limited Partnership. And I said, you really need to get into it. I think it would really be helpful. So he said, I said, well, what do we have to do? And he said, well, first thing you got to do is you got to take half of it and your wife has to take half of it and divide it up into your trust owns half of everything and your wife's trust owns half of everything. And then after we get that done, then we'll take the two trusts goes together and forms a Kachel Family Limited Partnership with you and Joanne owning 1% each and your three children on the other, which would be about 33%. I said, well, what does that do? He said, well, instead of the farm paying one tax like it is now, then the ownership, you own 1% and your wife owns 1% and the kids own the rest of it, 33% or whatever that comes out. So then you've got 5 people paying the taxes because they own it, rather than you paying all the taxes. Well, that lasted about 3 years, and he said, you got that in. It's a good thing we got yours in quick because the government finally figured out that, wait a minute here, we're losing all kinds of money on that thing. 5 people now is paying the taxes instead of 1. So it's divided up 5 ways, basically, rather than 1. And that really made a difference in the taxes that the farm pays. So
you get paid for being in the CRP? You get paid for being...
The farm gets paid.
The farm gets paid. Is that enough to cover your taxes? You break even?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A little more than that.
That's motivation to keep it in the CRP.
Yeah.
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 In your lifetime, what do you consider the biggest invention?
The driverless tractor.
The driverless tractor.
One of my neighbors that was got one. I said, "Well, Kenton, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I just sit there and watch television or read a book." He said, "You want to ride in one?" I said, "Yeah, I'd like to get that feeling." So he was farming over there, and he said, "You come over and ride with me." I went over there, and you get in there, and he pushes a button or two, starts around, follows that field. All he does is watch, listen to the radio. You got the TV in there, reads a book. I thought, my gosh.
He doesn't get the smells, though, does he? Does he?
Well, he does when he gets out. A major breakdown is when the air conditioner quits.
Yeah.
Golly.
Or technology when it all breaks down.
Yeah.
And you're stuck.
Yeah.
So when was the last time you were on a tractor yourself, driving it, doing something around the farm?
It's probably been 10 years.
Did it have air conditioning?
Yeah.
It did? Okay. Did you normally wear a hat when you were helping your dad on the farm?
Well, you did. Yeah. Until you got the cabs, and then I didn't like to wear a hat. But boy, before you did, because get out there, and our first tractor had those steel lugs on it. 30 minutes you was covered in dirt from one end to the other. Takes long to get dirty. You had to like the dirt, or you didn't farm.
And did you carry a pocket knife?
Oh yeah, all the time.
That was your tool of the trade, huh?
Yeah.
Do you still carry one today?
Yes.
You do.
Still carry one. I've stopped the wrenches with pliers. I don't carry that anymore, but I still got my pocket knife.
There's probably 2 or 3 things you always had with you.
Yeah. Sure enough is. Yeah, you had your chores to do in the morning, you had your chores to do at night when you got out of school, that's for sure. And now the kids, they'd probably sue their parents if they had to get up and milk a cow or gather the eggs or whatever they do.
How was your house heated?
We had butane or propane. The first stove, of course, was the stove. Coal. That was your main job when you was younger, was to make sure that the coal box was full and had lumber in there to start the fire in the morning.
And it'd be cold when you got up in the wintertime?
Well, yeah, you had everything piled on you could get on.
Yeah.
But Dad usually get up, or Mother, start the fire pretty early, go back to bed, let it burn. But yeah, times have changed now. You just push a button and leave the temperature. I don't fiddle with the temperature. I usually set it at about 70 or 71 and then leave it. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think it takes less fuel that way.
Well, that certainly has changed.
It has. That and the way the cars operate, they're just getting you ready for that driverless car. That's what they're doing. I don't know. It's strange, though, that they're using the big trucks first.
Yeah. I keep thinking if they had left trains in place, we wouldn't necessarily have to have this next phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. People movers.
Time's moving along. I don't know.
I read somewhere where you had said that change is generational.
Well, yeah, I don't think my dad, when he discovered duct tape and wire, I don't think he'd have ever thought it had gone anywhere else. He said, I can remember him saying when they put a self-starter on the car, he said, that's as far as I'm going to go with that thing. They'll never go any farther. Now you can get them and drive themselves.
Yeah.
Not even need a key.
No, air conditioning, golly, tells you what to do. If you pull over to the right side of your seat vibrates. If you pull to the left side of your seat vibrates. It's get back in the lane. If your car, I hadn't been paying much attention to the screen, but the other day a little sports car was passing me, and of course it shows up in the mirror, and then it whipped around right in front of me, and it came up on the screen. Said something about too close. And I got to looking at that, and then after it got way on up there, it went off. But I had never noticed that before. That it showed you when something was too close in front of you.
Oh, give me a 67 Volkswagen and forget that stuff. Do you still have your Cadillac?
Yes.
You do.
I don't enjoy it anymore. John died, and the thrill of hauling those guys around anymore and making all the parades from Cimarron, Clayton through, it's just gone. So I haven't driven it for a while.
What color was it?
Red.
Is it red? And it's with your combine and parked under protection?
In the shed.
Yeah. Hey.
We really enjoyed that thing. That's one thing that she enjoyed, was riding in that convertible.
Probably not too many of those out in this area.
No, I don't know of another one around. Seemed like somebody had one similar in Liberal, and there's one or two in Guyman that was similar, I think. Farmer had those.
You need a drive-in. We probably don't have those.
Well,
not
there's
many.
One at Guyman.
There is, and it still works, I think.
I think they do have, from time to time, they'll have a special out there.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right.
Seemed like they had some special days that they called and had a movie out there on it.
Well, did you ever meet Hank the cow dog?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of wish old Mark was still around to tell some stories, don't you?
Yeah.
So it really was a dog.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it was named Hank.
Yeah. I have a rather extensive Indian artifact collection. I've hunted anthropology and all that, and Indian stuff for several years, ever since I was a kid. We had a quarter there that had some Indian arrowheads on it that I found. That got me started early while I was driving the tractor. And I just enjoyed that part, so we still do it. And then I taught the class, this anthropology in Oklahoma Panhandle, and Harold Kachel down here, Perriton. He has an archaeological guy on his staff. That's all he does is hunt the artifacts on their land down there. And Harold would always, every time we'd have that class, he'd send all his people up here to take the class, and then he'd come up with all the trips. So I got to know him pretty well. And Scott said that they was going to take a tour and show some of the land down in there they'd just been working on. So I went down and went with them. We went in on some of his land, their south, and on the river, and went in on some of the military stuff that they'd been finding west of the 70, or that's Highway 70, I believe it goes south there first. Anyway, we was on the north side of the river, and we went to the east side of the river, went over to Hank the cowboy's ranch and looked at some stuff. And somebody said, "Well, how'd you get this ranch?" And he said, "Well, I didn't. Hank the cowboy bought it." Hank the cow dog. He called him a cowboy. So he made some money off of those.
So you're driving your tractor and you're watching for arrowheads, and I'm thinking that they're just little.
And I've missed a few. I couldn't get stopped quick enough. I could see them, but I couldn't get stopped quick enough. And the chisel or whatever I was running, I could see them go under there. I thought I knew exactly where they went, but I never did find them.
I mean, that would be small to be watching.
Well, I'd found several there before, and some pretty good size, knife or two. So I knew where to look, you know. And after a rain or something, when you're working it, well, they was there. They was washed out. They was easy to see, or I thought they was easy to see. But I still know where there's 1, 2 supposed to be at. But of course, it's in CRP now. You never find them. But
that's what I was going to say. You can't look. You can't look now. Can't dig it up. Could take it. Well, no, metal detector wouldn't do the trick either, since it's stone.
Yeah.
I've covered mine. Do you have anything else you want to ask? Anything else you want to ask?
No, unless you want to tell some stories. We can think of some characters around here.
Well,
just thought of Mark.
Well, they're about all gone, though, you know.
I know it.
When our combine man sold out and died, well, that's about it. I don't know. You might, if you look at that, or maybe you've got a copy of it. I don't know.
No, that's fine.
I don't know.
You had something to do with this building too, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, the
curator of No Man's Land Historical Museum.
Well,
that's different from
one.
that's the
Goodwill.
Yep.
Well, this one too.
And then this one too. Yep. And this one's called.
Well, this is the Calhoun room. This is
the Jones and Plummer.
Jones and Plummer.
Jones and Plummer. Okay.
The
trail.
Yeah. Now there's a strange thing about the trail that I've discovered. I don't know whether I put it in these or not. Here's a Yates, archaeological dig down there on that one. The Jones and Plummer Trail, we discovered, or I found, that it's been here since about since the 1400s, or the 1500s, sometime in there. It's an old Indian trail that came from the Minnesota, stretched down through here, and a lot of it was trading their stone that they're making arrowheads out of.
The flint.
Yeah.
And the pipestone probably.
Yeah. Yes. And So it was actually it was an early that Indian trail, and then Coronado actually came up the same trail, and got in. You know, looking for the 7 cities of gold in Kansas. And finally decided his people was just sending him on a wild goose chase, so they turned around and went to Grand Canyon, and then Jones and Plummer came along and was freighting down here, and they called it the Jones and Plummer Trail. So this thing is actually an old Indian trail.
Yeah.
And it's been here for 14 or 1500 years, with Coronado using it, and then finally Jones and Plummer, and they named it. And they get the credit for it, which is kind of ridiculous.
Okay, the Yates. Where was the Yates Place?
It's on Clear Creek as you cross the bridge. It's back to the west a mile and then south.
Okay.
There's a road
Okay.
just this side of the Clear Creek, and it goes west. Go a mile west, and then it was up on that ridge. The Yates is where it is.
See, I was getting Kate's confused there. Dale lives right east of
Yeah.
the highway, the bridge.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the Cates'.
Kate's and then Yates. Okay.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I can't think of anything.
Did you do any demonstration projects on your farm besides the windrow? Or your dad?
Well, he's probably one of the first ones that had it contoured, and then he had it terraced.
And the neighbors noticed that and did it?
Well, they wasn't much in favor of it because, you know, they didn't like the driving up over that stuff. The idea of going around and around is ridiculous, you know, really. Plowing it or working it on the contour just made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the terraces was, on our land anyway, was pretty close to where the contour that he had staked off worked.
And when your neighbors saw that it was working and
saw it was working.
they followed suit sometimes?
Yes, most of them did.
Most of them.
And then I think it finally kind of got required to be terraced, or highly encouraged.
But I guess if you don't have crops, you didn't have to worry with crop insurance through the years?
Well, yeah, we did.
You did.
Crop insurance.
Everybody has an opinion about that,
Yeah.
so if you don't want to share, that's fine.
Well, I thought it was all right. We always had crop insurance. We always used it.
Okay.
We always used the hill out of Guyman. Their crop insurance.
Well, like anything, some programs are good and some
Well,
not so much.
When CRP came in, it put a lot of the fertilizer and implement people out of business.
yeah.
It did. It had an impact.
Yeah, a lot of people was against it, you know, really, but the farmers should have been.
Yeah.
All the salesmen people made a difference on it.
Did your first tractors have rubber tires?
No,
They had the spikes,
lugs,
lugs.
dirt throwing things.
Yeah, someone had said that rubber tires were their greatest invention because they didn't have to use
The lugs.
the lugs. Yeah.
Yeah, our first tractors had lugs, and as soon as we got them, Dad was during the war. Dad was on the was on some kind of a survey or, and well, if somebody needs something, he was on the board that
Yeah.
approved him whether to get it or not. So he always got rubber tires and had the steel cut off, and the rubber tires welded back on. I forgot what he called, what that program was. Well, he was
Yeah, it was
board. Some kind of a
ration board.
ration board. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was, I don't think that was the actual name of it, but whatever it was, that's what it was.
Do you remember a movement in the late 40s, early 50s that said "Save Oklahoma Soil"? They had signs that they put out.
I don't remember those.
I may be the only person, and I might have dreamed it because I remember that.
That's SOS.
It was spelled SOS, and it was Save Oklahoma Soils. And
I don't remember seeing any signs around first. You know,
there's a sign out there somewhere. I can't find it.
I just think of the Brillo pads when you do SOS. There's Brillo pads that are SOS, aren't there? So pads.
Well, the windbreaks, you know, there's several windbreaks around that's still
Yeah.
pretty good size. Some of them are dying out. I mean, you know, that's probably due to neglect.
Yeah.
They're farther east.
There used to be a big windbreak north of Gate, across the Cimarron.
Yeah.
And it had pine trees in it. It was like ponderosa pine, and it was a pretty stable windbreak, is what I remember. May not be there now, but
yeah, there's some going to Woodward on 3.
Yeah.
There's still some nice ones down there.
Shelter belts, is that what you
shelter
call
belts.
shelter
Yeah.
belts?
Shelter belts. And that's where a lot of the so-called Chinese elms came from. Not only planted around the homesteads, they used them in the shelter belts. The Siberian elm.
They grew quickly.
And then they
Now the CCCs
become weeds.
planted some of those. Civilian Conservation Corps folks planted some of those.
Yeah, there's 4 entities that planted ours out there.
Yeah.
That Thomas got.
Yeah, a little later based on that.
And then I get a letter from him saying I'm supposed to take them out because they're a nuisance. Well,
yeah,
they're not a nuisance to me, but the birds, the wildlife really enjoy those.
Yeah.
They're not going to make you take them down, are they?
I
Though?
don't know.
It's on your property. It should.
I told him I was working on it, and I was, and a fire went through there.
Well, I mean, it would be your choice to take them down, or wouldn't it? No.
Yeah, it would be your choice.
It would be your choice.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's my questions. That's last. Do you have anything
No,
else?
I
Do you
have
have
not.
anything else?
No.
My last one then is, how do you want history to remember Dr. Harold Kachel?
Well, I hope I influenced some of my students. It's amazing wherever I go, I usually run into some of them, either college or high school. Or,
Major positive influence on a lot of people.
I had one that really surprised me. He was at Yarborough. He was a smart young man. And as soon as he got out of high school, he joined the military and went into the Air Force. And I kind of kept up with him. He became a whale of a pilot. And then when he tried to quit, they made him a test pilot. And I knew that he was a test pilot. But his dad had a collection of artifacts that he'd found around the area where Yarborough School and up in there. And he'd run across them here, 3 or 4 years ago now. And he was going to retire. And he said, I run across this stuff with Dad. Says, what should I do with it? And I told him, I said, well, bring it by and I'll take a look at it. It probably ought to go to the museum at Goodwill instead of here at Beaver, because I think most of it came from the Four Corners area up there. And I said, yeah, just come by and bring it by sometime. He said, I will. I'll just come by. And I didn't think anything about it. But I said, he called and said, I'm coming up there now. I'll be there probably this weekend. I said, you know where I live? He said, yeah, I know where you live. I said, I got pictures of the place. And I thought, he's got pictures of the place. That don't make sense. And I kind of wrote it off. He stopped in, brought the stuff in and looked at it, and I said, yeah, this all ought to go with the museum at Goodwill. I said, by the way, I said, how did you know where I live? He said, I got pictures of your place. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, yeah, I said, I flew over your place. I said, I decided I wanted to let you look at it, so I flew over your place one night and took pictures of it so I know where to go. And I said, you took pictures of the place? He said, yeah. So I flew over the place several times to make sure I knew where I was going. And I said, you was flying at night? He said, yeah. So that's when I did most of my flying, it's at night. And of course, I knew that he was flying out of Area 51 or 52 or wherever one of those places are up there. And I said, well, it's kind of strange, but I said, one night, the moon, I got up for some reason, went outside, and the moon was really bright, and I heard this plane going over. And I saw the contrail, and I knew the thing where it was high, but I could see a contrail, and said it'd be a long contrail, and then it'd stop. It'd be a little contrail, little contrail, little contrail. And then I started along the streak, and I said, then the thing was gone. He said, you saw that in the moonlight? I said, yeah, it was pretty clear. I knew it was high. He said, Dr. Kachel, says, if I was you, I wouldn't say anything about that. And I thought, oh, okay, that's enough said.
Yeah.
Don't have to question that anymore. So he's flying these planes that we don't know anything about out of there. And he said, you just said I wouldn't say anything about that for you. And I thought, that's it. That's enough said.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of scary.
Could be. Sure well could be.
He's a brilliant boy. Man, gosh. He tried to quit several times. They'd always bring him back, and then I guess when I don't know which area he's flying out of, but I know it's one of them.
Yeah.
That he didn't say anything about it, and I don't say anything about it either, but that was interesting to me that he knew exactly where I was at, and he's flying at night taking pictures.
Mm-hmm. He could have shared one with you.
Well, you knew he wasn't going to do that. Oh.
Well, I'd say there's lots of people in this area and across the state that remember you and appreciate the knowledge that you imparted to them.
Well, I hope I impressed some of them.
Well, you have me today. You've been great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for letting us come.
Well, I'm glad you did.